All right, friends, it's T-Man. We are back with a new video. It's on our good friend here, Jason Blaha again, the gym lifting, recruiting, fitness gear slave. We're going to react to his video. So Blaha says, insulin is what created mass monsters in modern bodybuilding. Oh, really? You think so, do you?
Insulin is what created mass monsters in bodybuilding, not steroids. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Thought I would chat with you guys and go.
Yes, carbohydrates created mass monsters, a mass of carbohydrates in their muscles, yes.
A little bit about this today, but if you guys will please click like down below, I would greatly appreciate it. If you are not following or subscribed, please do so and drop me a comment down below just to say hello or to give me your thoughts on the video. And let's get over into the topic. All right, this is always interesting. I laugh about this because I always see on social media, you'll see pictures sometimes with comparisons. It'll be natural versus enhanced. And the guy that lists as natural is very obviously on steroids and growth hormone. And then the other guy on the right has 50 pounds more muscle. So it's a comical situation. And I think it's because people are ignorant regarding, what...
Not everybody, but it depends, yeah.
Has happened in bodybuilding, and that's okay. The average person out there who maybe doesn't lift or is new to lifting is not fully aware of the full history of how these different substances got used and into the mainstream and how they're abused in the really, really hardcore bodybuilding world. And again, so you'll see people who oftentimes they'll see some monstrously massive bodybuilder. Like once we entered that mass monster era around 95 and on 1995 and on, so it's been about 25, 30 years since that era came in. Everyone then looks at that and goes, oh yeah, that's steroids, but it's not. That's really not. So what people need to understand, if you're thinking androgen receptor, meaning that's what they're talking about, anabolic steroids, right? You're talking about like Arnold.
Androgen receptor is this. What is he talking about, man? Steroids, they don't build muscles, bro. They can aid in protein synthesis, but they themselves don't build muscles. Molecules don't build muscles. Fuck. You want to know what builds muscles? Cells. Cells build muscles. How do you get more cells? How do you get your body to increase the cell count? Well, there has to be damage, a level of stress in damage, so that the body can increase the cells to adapt to whatever stressor is causing that damage to your body. You understand me? It's highly regulated by follistatin, myostatin, and the satellite cell, these stem cells. Stem cells build muscles, not steroids.
Schwarzenegger. Talking Mike Menzer, Frank.
MPS is activated by muscle damage.
Right, go back to that era, right? Remember Pumping Iron and Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Those guys were pushing the absolute limit.
The Hulk, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all these people, these fake people on steroids. It's just comical. These are all his heroes. My hero, a drug addict. Oh, give me a break. Some fake, artificial fake dude, an actor. You know what I mean? Acting.
Limits of size from steroids, meaning they were abusing pretty heavy amounts.
Okay, they were abusing drugs. Well, there you go. He's admitting to you they abuse the drugs. They take drugs. They're abusing drugs like any other drug addict in the street. Okay.
Keep in mind, it's not an infinite scale, meaning just because you double it again doesn't mean you're going to get twice as much muscle. Those guys were pretty well pushing the limits of that in terms of...
They were pushing the limits. I don't really think they were pushing the limits, but okay.
Good genetics, training really hard, and then using very, very heavy doses of...
Training really hard, pushing genetics. Let me get this straight. So they lifted conventionally, right? 70% of their concentric lifts. 70%. They could lift 70% of their max in a concentric full range of motion. Yet it didn't work for them anymore, right? Because everybody's complaining about newbie gain limit, genetic limit, and hard gainer, right? So all of a sudden they got a different outcome just because they took a molecule, a steroid, gave them a different outcome. But yet you didn't get a different outcome doing it naturally. So you think because you took a steroid, that's what gave you that a different outcome in your lifting. No, what you got there was something artificial called sarcoplasmic. That's why all these steroid people complain when they go off their steroids, they shrink like a motherfucker. They shrink faster than they put on those fake phony sarcoplasmic gains. Okay, dude? Because full range of, again, your full range of motion, you'd still have to do something astronomically different to get a different outcome lifting. Even with on steroids, bro, get it? Muscles have to be damaged to build, whether you take steroids or not. So if you don't damage them and build more of these myofibrillars, then you're not going to build any muscle. You're just wasting your time.
Of anabolics, okay? So
look, again, if you read science, it says it doesn't matter how much protein you eat. It will not build a myofibrillar just eating protein. You understand me? Listen to me. Being adapted to your full range of motion, you're adapted, right? You understand what I'm trying to explain to you? Look, plants are not going to change your genetics. When you say you reached a genetic limit, right? You didn't really reach a genetic limit, but I'm just saying, you say a genetic limit. Do you think that steroids can bypass your genetic limit? You fucking must be crazy. You have to be gone out of your brain to think that. That's just insane. No plant can do that, can override your genetic. Now, it can manipulate, give you a cosmetic look, but it's temporary, providing you take the drug consistently. But when that drug stops, you'll go back to normal. You'll go back to normal because it's cosmetic, bro. It's cosmetic. Any doctor will tell you, oh, you want steroids for cosmetic purposes. You understand me? That's the first thing they say to you.
Need to understand that's about how big they get. So, I mean, you start talking about a guy.
Yeah, I mean, insulin can work. It's very anabolic, okay? So how do you do it as a natural person? You eat some complex carbohydrates. You know, I guess the higher the complex carbohydrate, the more insulin is going to be flowing in there. It's more anabolic. So if you go through a damaging session, a very damaging session in the eccentric, like real bodybuilders do in the eccentric exercises, you're gonna get you're gonna get bigger and stronger. You're gonna get more myofibrillar growth. The problem with a lot of calisthenic guys are they're adapted to their exercises. They're doing it too frequent and they're just stretching the muscle. That's why they're not getting gains anymore. They don't get gains anymore. They get a certain amount of gains in the beginning quickly, but it subsides because they're stretching. It's not damaging, they're stretching. There's a difference between stretching and damaging. You understand me? You can come into the gym adapted and start stretching, multiple stretches, stretching your muscles, but that doesn't mean you're going to damage them. You understand me? What will damage a muscle fiber? Very heavy eccentric exercise, but it can't happen. Look, it can't happen if you're coming often to the gym. It can only happen once a week, okay? It's very specific. I can't explain it in this video. It's complicated. You have to come in once a week after the repair and the remodeling, and then you lift heavy in the eccentric and you can get this damage to come back. But if you come every day, it's protected. If you come in every day or every other day, it's now stretching in a protected state. You understand me? It's kind of hiding in the type 1.
You know, say 6 foot tall, contest lean 220, 230. I mean, that's extremely heavy anabolic use usually. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
That's a big dude. But then, you know, guys are like, these guys are 50 pounds heavier. Some are more. There's some of these guys are like 280 ripped and they're shorter than that. They're like 5'7". And the average pro bodybuilder is about 5'7" on the Olympia stage. They're not 5'9", they're not 5'10". I've met these guys, they're not. Okay, I'm 5'9", and most of them I've met were shorter than me. That should tell you something. No, they're really not.
That should tell you something. That a lot of short people are insecure. That's why they take up bodybuilding. They're short. All these people on the Olympia stage and whatever, and even in powerlifting, they're short because, man, it's a psychological thing. Okay, I don't know. I can't tell you. It's unfortunate. You know what I mean? These things never bothered me when I was growing up. It took me a while to grow up too. Thinking I'd be short too or something. I don't know. You're short and then you get tall. You don't really think about those things, I guess, until you reach adulthood, right?
They're not average height. They're usually short today, and they have been for 20-something years. That's the proportions they want. So yeah, these guys are packing sometimes 50, 60 pounds more muscle tissue. And a lot of times they're leaner, and they're even getting more shredded sometimes. So it came down to insulin, right? it came down to insulin. And what essentially started being figured out, again, this is like 30 years ago. This is really old at this point. Guys started trying to chase kind of chemical warfare. They're like, okay, this is how big we can get with these things. Can we get bigger? And they're like, we just keep taking more and more, and it's barely making any difference, Add another 30% to their anabolic dose, and they're like, you gained a pound. Pound of muscle over the next year extra, for your next bodybuilding show. So they started looking always for experimenting.
They didn't gain a pound of muscle.
For new things to add in. People discovered growth hormone, obviously. And what most of them figured, the growth hormone didn't really make them significantly bigger. It just let them get leaner easier, better synergy with the gear. They lost body fat, sometimes while trying to gain muscle, so let them eat more. And this is kind of what they notice, it's like, well, it definitely matters. You make me a little fuller, a little rounder.
I don't even think Blaha knows what he's talking about. He's just making stuff up.
But if anything, it wasn't really stacking the size on. And what some of the medical doctors and people and scientists who were kind of around these circles figured out, they're like, oh, it's because while the growth hormone is in your body, sure, it would elicit an anabolic response and has a synergy with the androgens, but it makes you insulin resistant while it's in your system. And that goes away later. But if it's in your system 16 hours a day, see where we're going? They're like, so any...
Yeah, but if there's no damage, there's nothing to build. The insulin can be there. It's anabolic. Okay. You think just because you increase the insulin, let's say I eat shitloads of potatoes, right? That will increase insulin. It makes you anabolic, okay? So I eat lots of it. I eat lots of complex carbohydrates, potatoes all day, all night, every day. You think that's going to magically build a muscle? That's like these people, they're crazy. They're like, I'm going to do a bulk diet. I'm going to build muscle. Well, fat doesn't build muscle, but the weight weighing down on you would have to compensate by building what? I guess mass, right? See what I mean? But that mass will shrink eventually. In lifting eccentrically, your goal really, your focus is trying to build more muscle fibers per se, not just myofibular growth. You understand me? The contractile proteins. The goal is to try to get more of these permanent fibers. They're astronomically difficult to get. That's why you want to do a lot of sets. You want to keep the rep range high and a lot of sets. You understand me? And heavy in the eccentric. You want overwhelming damage. The more the damage is overwhelmed in that area, the higher chances you have of getting more of these permanent fibers. See what I mean? Not just contractile proteins. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. That's why people ask me, how come you look like a bodybuilder and you don't work out? Because a lot of it is permanent. I can't tell you how much, I don't know, but a lot of it. I think in the past, I wasn't really sure what I was doing. Had I done more of it, I probably could have, when I was younger, I could have got more permanent muscle fibers. But I didn't think about it at the time until later I understood it in science. Right? Science explains it to you, that's all. It just tells you, oh, this is what you could get, what you do if you do this or if you do that. I didn't know that at the time. We didn't have internet at the time back then, man. Internet was a new thing just coming out. And as far as information in the library, there was only so much information I could read about, like satellite cells and things.
Metabolic signaling is being blunted because we can't shuttle glucose into the muscle and then amino acids in as easier due to creating a temporary insulin resistance, but it makes you burn body fat like crazy. Right? So
it doesn't matter. Again, if you don't have a level of damage, there's nothing to build. No damage, there's nothing to build.
What then did they figure out? Hey, what happens if we just add insulin? Insulin is really anabolic, because they started figuring out some of the type 1 diabetics on large amounts of insulin were gaining muscle easier. So this was noticed. This was noticed in even books I saw written 25, 30 years ago. They're like, yeah, these diabetic bodybuilders are gaining muscle really easy. And they figured it out. It's like, oh, well, insulin is extremely anabolic to muscle tissue, more so than fat. So what did they figure out? Well, what happens if we're insulin?
What did they figure out? Well, here's the thing. If complex carbohydrates exceed that breakdown, right? So you're going to start loading the complex carbohydrates. But then if it goes even higher, it spills over. So then you start getting fat. And that's what happens. So you start getting fat. increasing insulin. So let's say we try to increase it naturally. So we eat a lot of complex carbohydrates. Now we exceed that breakdown. You understand me? We exceed that breakdown. We're going to start loading it in the sarcoplasm. You'll see the sarcoplasm start to expand. When glycogen synthesis exceeds that breakdown, you will see an increase in the sarcoplasm. It'll expand. And you'll start to look like these phony bodybuilders too. Get it? Lifting in the gym. You understand what I'm trying to explain to you? It doesn't work with fucking carbohydrates. It only works with complex carbohydrates. Do you understand me? That's what makes it superior. Complex carbohydrates. Now, when you exceed that breakdown, that's when you see that mass, that sarcoplasmic mass. You're gonna look like these phony bodybuilders, okay? You're gonna grow these phony muscles. Now, you're going to stand on the scale, you're going to start getting weight, and you're going to pretend to everybody that you built muscle. Now, when you go even higher with the complex carbohydrate, then, only then will it start storing as fat. See what I mean? That's what's going to happen, dude. Hold on a second. Somebody's calling me.
Resistant, but we could just add more insulin and it'll force the nutrients in. Being resistant to something, you just add more of it.
I like that. We'll take more insulin and we'll force the nutrients in. Yeah, you'll force them in where though? You understand me? That doesn't make any sense. There's no damage, no growth.
That'll sort it right out. Not saying always in a good way, not saying there are consequences to this, but that's what they did. And what do you think happened? You got Dorian Yates. The guys were coming in bigger. All of a sudden, you had guys, because they were already running over 2 grams of androgens a week, throwing in all that growth hormone, like what happened when they had the insulin. Some of these guys were coming in 20 pounds heavier the next year with no fat gain. Oh man, because here's what happens. Any possible fat gain they would have gained from the insulin gets blunted by that growth hormone. They're not gaining fat at all.
Yeah, they all looked washed out and fat, man. That's what they are. And it's all sarcoplasmic growth. It's fake artificial growth. That's what blah is not telling you.
But what it ended up doing pushed through the insulin resistance that the growth hormone was creating, just forcing the nutrients in. Well, the end result, these guys started getting really big. And then when some guys started figuring out they could get part of the benefits of their growth hormones because of the elevated IGF-1, let's just pin IGF-1. And that's when you saw guys on budgets started getting really big. They're like, testosterone, IGF-1, insulin. That started producing mass monsters for less money. These guys started getting massive. It's also when we started seeing the death toll start going up, the health effects getting worse, right? Started seeing type 2 diabetes developing out of the bodybuilding.
Yeah, they started getting massive. The sarcoplasm. All they did was increase the sarcoplasm, which they already increased anyways. They're not building any muscle, bro, like Blaha. Why do you think Blaha's not growing? He's adapted. There's no damage, there's no growth. He's adapted. There's nothing going on here. Waste of time.
Because there are consequences to these things. You do this to your body as a sort of a science experiment. There are going to be consequences, and they can be deadly, they can be health-threatening. That's what you see. But so when people think of this and they think of these really massive bodybuilders, no, it's not the steroids, guys. It's the insulin, and at this point, like IGF-1 and insulin both. This is what they're utilizing to get that size. It's obviously they're using grams of other anabolics. But guys were way smaller, still using tons of that stuff 50 years ago, okay? It is the insulin that's created these mass monsters. That has been kind of the final key that got them there. And I don't think it's healthy. It's obviously deadly. It's obviously shortening their lives, but it is the explanation.
All right, friends, I guess that was the end of that video, man. Blah is such a loser. I'll see you in the next one. Tell us what you think about that. Like, subscribe, support the channel. Man, tell us what you think about that. That was ridiculous.